Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Hey everyone, let me introduce myself. My name is Wivi Amelia Rosi. In this video, I will present about a methodology for identifying, documenting, and extrapolating potential good practices in disaster risk management. First, introduction. The need to make evidence-based decisions in the field of disaster risk management, especially in light of recent crises and emergencies on a global scale, has become imperative for DRM practitioners. Practices already applied in different crises and disasters can become a useful reference for those facing similar situations. The establishment of a systematic procedure to identify, document, and extrapolate good practices is crucial for adopting the same practices in other contexts with similar needs. Next, definition of good practices and approaches for their identification. The identification and documentation of good practices is a powerful instrument for knowledge sharing and management. The concept of good practices is strictly related to the one of evidence-based knowledge, as extant literature clarifies that a practice can be represented by an activity, strategy, methodology, system, process, technique, tactic, or approaches grounded into practical experience. The first aspect is therefore to figure out what counts as evidence. Proposed methodology for identifying, documenting, and extrapolating potential good practices in DRM. The proposed methodology stems from the need to draw from practices that, based on previous experience, have demonstrated to work within the DRM. It comprises 5 steps identifying, documenting, and extrapolating potential good practices. The term identify refers to the activity of sifting through available evidence to find practices that meet the requirements of a good practice. Once good practices have been identified, it is important to document them, namely to explain the details of their implementation. This allows for situating the practices within the context and network of actors where it has proven effective. However, to meet the criteria of replicability, a future step requires extrapolating the future of the practices that have proven effective across multiple contexts and or settings. To enable the extrapolation of potential good practice, understand those that might work in another context. It is necessary to observe how the 6 requirements are responded to in the case studies. For example, by comparing practices against Requirement 1. It is possible to notice the need for collection and dissemination of location-based risk information is often responded to by the usage of web apps and technology to create risk maps. However, to make this information accessible to all, initiatives such as risk education, workshop, collaboration with community-based core organizations, and alternative data collection method are necessary. While risk maps are the most immediate means of conveying collocation-based risk information, alternative methods of data collection, such as incorporating data associated with landmark and place-based memory, can also be valuable. By systematically following the proposed methodology, it is possible to address the 2 aforementioned challenges of defining requirements and transferring practices in different contexts, keeping in mind the ultimate requirement that practices are responding to. Given its general character and the flexibility to adopt each step to the specificities or different topics, the proposed methodology can be likely applied to identify potential good practices in DRM domains. Example: spatial and land use planning, natural resource, and environmental management. The choice of the theoretical framework determines the final list of requirements extracted and as a result also affect the identification of the practices that are potentially good to respond to those requirements. In other words, the definition of what qualifies as good practice is inherently linked to the framework and the system of requirements embraced by the researcher or practitioner. However, is the absence of formal evaluation for their practice, its effectiveness, which along with transferability represent one of the two criteria for defining a practice as good, is assumed solely by the description of a case study. The notable strength of employing this methodology lies in the fact that, rather than providing generic recommendation, it offers practical example rooted in well-described contexts. This enables practitioners to consult this practice and relate them to contingent challenges they face. This feature distinguishes our methodology from conventional lists of good practices. Moreover, the methodology collects multiple hands-on examples of application across diverse cases and contexts and thus distinguishes itself from practices based on a single case. Furthermore, in our view, this methodology not only requires interdisciplinary effort, thus fostering cross-sector collaboration in the RM, but it also bridges the academic and applied domains. These two spheres often remain disconnected, especially in the social science, but it is crucial that they are not. Okay, that's all my video presentation. If there are any mistakes, I apologize. Wassalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.